Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Damn Parenting, your English-speaking parenting podcast from Amsterdam. And not as always, we are your hosts, but I am your solo host this week. My name is Maren because, it's the season and we're all sick. So Eva had to take a little break this week. And hopefully she'll be back with full force for the next episode. And however, we did want to bring out the episode this week. So I had an amazing chat with Elizabeth, and she is a studied librarian who has over 15 years experience under her belt when it comes to reading books, curating books, picking books. And I was discussing the question with her why it is so important, especially in our modern days where we are surrounded by the internet, anything tech, everything digital, screens and all that stuff. Why is it still so important that we pick up a paper book and read to our little ones? And she shared some very insightful knowledge with me and some very surprising numbers, which really encouraged me to make sure that I get my reading with my little one in every day, also for myself. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did having a chat with her, and you can take out some information that is good for you and that is relevant for you. I'll leave it with that. We'll dive straight into the interview. And because Eva can't join me this episode, we will have a little discussion about this episode in the next Damn Chats. So you can get our personal opinion and our personal take on when it comes to reading to the little ones. I'll leave it with that. So enjoy the interview and I will hear you on the next episode. And here we are with Elizabeth. Hi, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, happy to be here.
So let me give you a little background about Elizabeth because she is, I can say this pun, she's a book of knowledge. Introducing the right topic. So Elizabeth is a former school librarian, and not only that, but she has also a master's in library and information science. We're all going to take a deep breath because, yes, I am also very impressed by that. And I had no idea that you can dive into books and the library in that depth, but here we are. So she is really the person to talk to when it comes to what books to read, where to find them, and most importantly, why should we read at all to our little kids? And especially, and that's what I'm going to shoot. The first question is, when do we start to read? When is the best age? When is the best time to introduce our little ones to books?
Yeah. Well, on some respects, you could say before they're born, if you're reading to them in your belly, they're going to be hearing your voice and getting used to that. But beyond that, obviously, as soon as they come out, you can try reading anything. They're going to also just be picking up the words. But I think when you want to start just reading books and having that moment where we think, oh, I'm reading to my child, I think 3 months and up starts to be a good time for that. They're not going to be really paying much attention. They're not going to be seeming like they know anything that's going on, but they're getting that exposure already. They're understanding what it means to open a book, to see what a page is, to see how we turn a page. They see that there's pictures there. And then at 6 months, they really start to pay more attention. So as soon as you can start reading to them, the better. The second you can start reading to them when they come out is the best thing you can do for a kid.
So it's really like what you said, introducing to the book, literally, like this is a book, this is how you open it, this is how we handle a book. So really like break it down to the very simplest parts. Interesting. And then it, whatever, you can just talk about the I guess there is not much words in a book for a 3 months old.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually the best thing for the younger kids is simple to no text, right? So when we're talking like 0 to 6 months, it's those high contrast, black and white board books that are just short, cardboard. Maybe there's pictures with images that is just like one picture per page, or those crinkly fabric books so they can chew on it, they can hear the sound, they can put it in their mouth. They're still getting that concept of a book even if it's made from fabrics, right? Yeah. And a lot of the times they don't have a lot of words. You don't need them to have a lot of words. You might just be pointing to the picture and saying flower or bee, and the bee goes buzz, and you're filling the words in, you're making them up yourself. But again, they're getting these very simple concepts and learning how to handle the book and how to connect those words to what they're seeing. So
yeah, I was just talking like I had never done this, but I have done this. It's just over 3 years ago. I was totally blank. I was like, what did I read? But then when you mentioned this whole contrast books, I remember one book very specifically, and then the whole crinkling and all that.
Yep.
Now the memories are coming back, but these books are already out of my house. But yeah,
Right? Yeah.
now I remember. Yes, yes, yes. So that's good. Basically, there is never an too early stage
hmm
to start exposing
hmm
them to books.
hmm
Okay. Is
Yeah.
there any specific books? So you mentioned the books that have texture and
hmm
noises, but
hmm
also books that have high contrast. Is there
hmm
any very specific names that you want to drop? One of your favorites for
Yeah,
that age group?
for that early age, I honestly think like because it's mainly just black and white pictures, I think any book, it doesn't really matter. I was saying that the Usborne or Usborne, I'm not sure how to
Yeah.
pronounce it, books are great just because I think they do a really good job of sort of making these sort of educational books, but making them fun. So I don't have one necessarily for that age group that I'm like, this is the one because there's so little that is happening in the books. I think if you can get, it's a lot of the books that they'll give away here at the library. The OBA does the Book Start program where they get the little orange book box and they'll put a lot of these sort of simple black and white books or fabric books in and give them to you for free if you sign your kid up. That would be more what I suggest for this age group is make sure you've signed up for the OBA's Book Start program and get that
Hmm.
little orange box. And whatever they give you will be the perfect book for that age group is what I would say. I think for the 0 to 6 month range.
And what is then the next age bracket where you say
Mhm,
this is the next kind of like the next
mhm.
chunks of 0 to 6 months? And then what's the next categories?
I would say 6 to 12 months when they're really starting to understand more. You can see that they understand more. They're paying a little bit more attention. That would be kind of switching to board books with stories. So when we talk about these different books, we have story books, which, like it sounds, tells a story. We have concept books, which are things like farm or numbers. So the
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
concept is the one thing, and that's what's happening in the book. And then there's novelty books, which have lift the flap or push a button for sound or pop up. So I would say for the 6 to 12 month range, you can start giving them more story. So we're not just doing the concept of color or black and white or whatever. We're actually going to do a story, but again, really short, simple text. So I really like the Sandra Boynton books. She's an American writer. They're very, very short. They're always usually rhyming. They'll also deal with concepts like opposites. She's got so many books that it's hard to like not have one that your kid will enjoy. So you can start moving into like, here's a story and something's happening and there's characters and there's more words on the page. But I find that it's still the kind of interactive novelty books that they're going to want because they want to touch the book. They want to put it in their mouth still. So
Mm-hmm.
anything that there's a flap with something hiding behind that flap or anything that they can kind of put their fingers on starts to really be fun for that 6 to 12 month age. So again, I like the Usborne books, like the sound books that they make. We have one, it's like nature sounds and it's got this really beautiful music, but it also has like the real twittering of birds and the real sound of a bee. So she really great way to put a book in front of her that's not like a television screen, but still feels like, oh wow, this is
I
like
remember those. Yes,
yeah.
I remember. And you know what the funniest thing? So I bought a bunch of these sound books,
Yeah.
and the one that I bought was the dinosaur one because I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
how does a dinosaur sound like? I do want to know how all this
Yeah,
goes. I bought
right.
it secretly for myself, but
Yeah.
yes, I can. I remember these. They were a great hit here
Yeah.
because they can really like get into it, and then they can look for the little dot to press, and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember those. Yeah, that
Exactly.
was good.
Yeah.
Not so
And
great for traveling because
oh yeah.
it's a noise book,
Oh
but
yeah.
for home, very good.
Yeah. But I also want to say that for any of this range, so 0 to 12 months, that as long as you're reading to the kids, so even if it seems like they're not paying any attention, like sometimes I have a book, I have her in my lap, and she's currently almost 11 months. She is climbing over me, trying to grab more books, throwing them on the floor, but I'll just kind of keep reading because, again, she's getting that exposure. She's hearing these words that she may not know yet, but we especially reread the same books over and over. So a book that at 3 months, like she couldn't even look at one page of yet. She just would close the book on me. Now she'll like sit there and she's like, oh yeah. And then there's that person and she'll kind of point to it. And so I think any book you have in the house, any sort of board book or kid book or picture book, you can try reading to your kid at any stage and don't give up if they're like, oh, well, they're not paying attention whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
read through it, read as much of it that you can without them being fully over it. You can look at the pictures and talk through the pictures without reading the actual text. So that's one thing too. If somebody's given you a book that's better for an older kid, or if there's like like a classic that you really love that you want to read to them, give it a try at any point, and they're still getting something from it. They're still getting those words, that background knowledge you're giving them by reading the story. But yes, for this group, the books I mentioned is also really fun for the 6 to 12. So all the interactive bits.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. And then 12 months on, what's then the next gap that we want to look at?
I would say so maybe like 18 to 24 months. And at this point, right in their development, they're starting to say words themselves. They're starting to move more. So kind of, I think of like interactive books in a different way. So there's Each Peach Pear Plum, which I don't have the name of the author in front of me right now, but it's kind of like a hidden picture book. So the text will start talking about like little Tom Thumb and where is he hiding? And you can see he's hiding in the picture. So they can start kind of treating it like a game, and you can search out together like, oh, where is that person? And it leads to the next picture, and it kind of tells a story still, but it's got that aspect where they really have to be looking at the picture and kind of dissecting it themselves. And they're just have a little bit more attention span. It's still a short board book, so it's not text heavy. It still, I think, has rhyming in it. I would have to double check that. So these things that kind of keep them interested, but now they can really be looking at it and interacting with you, and you can have that kind of conversation with them in a different way where they can point to it, they can respond to the book more. So I think in that it's kind of nice to have these books where still very short text, very small books, still kind of board books with that heavy cardboard that they aren't going to be ripping, but they're starting to grow more into picture books for 18 to 24 months. You can start exploring the paper picture books a bit more.
Yeah. And when we're reading, so one thing that I am German, my husband is American, and our daughter speaks Dutch at daycare. My Dutch is, let's say, improvable. Nevertheless, I still have some Dutch books, and I really tried reading it to her. And I know it's not 100% right, but I still wanted to try it and expose her and like learn with her. Do you think you are the professional and you know a little bit more about that? Is that something that's okay if I don't read the word like 100% correct? Are they still going to get the benefit, or am I confusing them too much and then they pick up the wrong sound?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it's something I'm grappling with as well, because I've heard some people say that if you're not the native speaker, don't speak it to them at home. And for me, like I checked out Ik wil mijn Spain. I think that was the title of the book from the library, which is I want my pacifier. And when I read it as an English speaker, I read it Speen, and I didn't know it was pronounced Spain. So I kept being Speen, Speen. So I do wonder because, where is she going to get that from? Well, she'll get it from school eventually. They'll do the correct pronunciation or daycare. So I've decided just to focus really heavily on the English books, which is why I've been doing the English storytime reading for the people who, if their kids are at daycare, they're only getting Dutch, right? And this way, if they are English speakers at home, they'll get the English at the story time that I'm doing. So maybe in your example, reading German books, and really bringing the German in, since that's your native language, would give your child that exposure. But I also think that reading is reading. The more you read, the more exposure, the more language is also really good. So that's where I'm torn. Like I'm not an expert on language, so I can't say what is exactly the best, but I do think that any books they're seeing, any exposure to another book, be it whatever language, is good for them. So I think that would just be a personal choice by family if you want to try to read the Dutch books. I do know a family who checks out the books from the library because, of course, Dutch is the most books they have at the libraries here. And then they translate them into their language and then read the book to them in their own language, which is a little bit more work maybe on our part. So that's an option too, just because it's so hard to get books from our native languages at the libraries here. So I think whatever makes sense to you there.
Okay. So I was always curious if I'm doing more damage than good, but I guess I'm hit the middle ground, I guess.
Yeah.
With that one.
Yeah. I don't think you're doing damage.
I think so.
Like some point they'll learn, that's how that word is pronounced, and it'll just have to be a correction on their part. But
it is funny when my husband reads he does speak German. So if he reads German books and he does not pronounce it correctly, my daughter is like very quick to correct him. Like, oh no, that's not it. That doesn't sound right. So I guess she would probably do this. She hasn't done it with Dutch yet. So I guess I'm like pretty okay with the reading.
Right? Yeah. I do keep thinking about it as like me learning Dutch with the picture books. When I do read them, I'm like, okay, well, this is me learning Dutch. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So coming back to, so we stopped at two. So
Mhm,
what is then the next, I guess, then also category of books?
mhm,
Because now we're really getting into longer books. They start to
mhm.
have the speech explosion and really like getting into more patience span also.
Yeah.
So what's like the next group that you would put together?
I would say it's like a big group at this point, like 2 to 4. So I would say two to
Okay.
3 years. And like, yeah, like you said, they've got the bigger attention span. So now you can really move into picture books. I would say solidly. Again, the younger they are, the shorter the text. Honestly, until they're about 5, I think the shorter the text is better, unless, your kid is really showing you. And you'll see these picture books that I think of as like school picture books that have so much text on each page and they're really trying to get across a subject or kind of teach something. And yeah, they're great when the kids are school aged and they're doing a project or, they have to read a book by themselves at some point. But I think when you're still doing these read alouds to the younger kids, just really short, simple books where they can really start paying attention more to the story from 2 to 4. And you can find books that are just really cute and humorous where the pictures are saying one thing, but the words are saying something else, which creates this really great humor, this juxtaposition, and they start understanding that more, right? They're getting that more background knowledge from their life to understand, oh, this is a joke. This is funny. It's telling me this, but it's showing me this. You can start having conversations around that, like, why was that funny? Like, or why do you think the character is doing this? So you can really start engaging with them more as far as comprehension goes. Like, why do you
Mm-hmm.
think the character made that choice? Why did this happen? And I mean, they're going to be starting to work on that skill. So they're not going to maybe know. They'll be like, oh, I don't even know what you're asking me, right? But you can start like talking about the text more until
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
school age and they can process it better. So yeah, for 2 to 4, I think I was saying that the Mac Barnett and John Klassen books are just, I love them. I think the illustrations are really amazing. And they're the kind of people who play with that humor of what the picture and the text are saying. So Sam and Dave Dig a Hole is a really fun book. I just read, which is a holiday book, but I think it's How Does Santa Get Down the Chimney? It was a Christmas book that, again, was just really fun with the pictures and the words. And so you can start exploring picture books. And I just want to say on a side note too about picture books that there's this big misconception that picture books are meant for children, meaning that children should be reading picture books. And that is not the case. Picture books are actually written a language level for adults. So picture books are really meant to be read aloud to children. So they're a much higher level than a kid could read for themselves, but they can understand it if you're reading it to them, right? So they can understand, start acquiring that background knowledge, start acquiring that vocabulary, but they are meant for you as an adult to read to a child versus early reader books, which are easy reader books, which are phonics-based books meant for kids to learn to read with. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of times parents confuse it and think, oh, well, you're starting to become an age where you can read for yourself. Here's a picture book. It
Mm-hmm.
still may be too hard. It could be great. Your kid could do it fine. But the books that kids will start reading themselves, which is around 5 to 7, 5 is very precocious, but 6, 7, you start learning to read, be the easy readers or early readers, which are not fun books. They are meant to learn to read. So it's very simple. Like cat is Pat and, has a
Yeah.
hat, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they're not fun for us to do as read alouds. They're not meant for us to do as read alouds. They don't have stories a lot of the time. So I just wanted to make that distinction really clear that picture books are just like a fun short story that we can read to our children.
That is good. Yeah, that's a good side note. And I think a lot of nodding and ahas, hopefully, with the listeners right now,
Yeah.
because I'm like, ah, yes. Now we see where we talk to someone who actually studied this.
Yeah.
What are the criterias if you pick books? Like, what are your things that you look out for when you make a choice for your reading groups?
hmm
What do you base your choice on?
hmm I mean, the main thing I base it on is honestly the simplicity of text is one
Mm-hmm.
of the when I open a book and right away I see just pages of paragraphs of words on a page, especially for this young age group. I'm like, no, this isn't going to work. Right away I can just tell by looking at it. Sadly, again, a lot of the Dutch books I see in the library, this is the case, and I don't understand I'm like, okay, no, like I can't check any of these out. So I try to look, it should only be like a sentence or two per page. And that's the thing. It's really hard to write a picture book or a kid's book. Like they shouldn't be more than 32 pages. So it's like this economy of word that you're trying to get a story across in. Like, there's some writers who just do it so well. And then, I mean, beautiful art helps, right? It's something that you're going to maybe be looking at for years and reading the same book over and over again. So I always try to read something through myself. And if it's something that engages me, that I find there's either something, I really go for funny because kids love funny. So if it makes me laugh in some way, like we read for the fall one, we read this book, The Leaf Thief, and it's about a squirrel who thinks that his leaves are being stolen when autumn comes because they're falling off the tree. So he's going around accusing all of the woodland animals of stealing his leaves, and Bird has to explain to him that it's the wind and that this is part of nature. So the kids are learning this concept that like the seasons change and the wind comes, but it's also just so funny because this little squirrel is just running around wondering what happened to all of his leaves. So I always try to read something through and think like, does it catch my attention in that way? Is it humorous? Is the text short? Do I know it's going to hold a kid's interest? Which is unfortunately, like that's not great. It's like kind of that like, I know because I know. After reading kids for 15 years, there's kind of that feeling you get. You're like, oh yeah, like I've seen this one go bad. This one feels good, I can tell, so it doesn't help parents. So I guess I would say go talk to a librarian. Like they know what books are best for kids. They've read so many books. They get so many books. They have so much exposure to books that if you aren't sure, go talk to someone who works at a bookstore who also sees so many books. I actually was looking through for this, the Read Aloud Handbook by Jim Treely. So this book is it's been around forever and it's meant for parents. So the book is a compendium of great books to read to kids based on their age. And in the beginning, because the book is actually meant for parents and not teachers or not people who are in the industry, he's got this great introduction about why reading is so important and all of these facts backed up by research and why it's so important for reading to be happening at home and not to wait until kids go to school. That I don't know if you've heard of the million word gap, but it is kids who have been read to, they say 5 books a day. I think if you do 1 book a day, you're succeeding, right? But 5 books a day before they reach school age know 1 million more words than kids who aren't read to at all.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's a big chunk.
Right?
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So he talks about a lot of that in this book. So I would say getting a book like that too, that just like it breaks down by topic, by age group, and will tell you just really great books that you're like, oh, this sounds good. I'll get this for my kid. And you don't have to worry because they've kind of done all the work for you. And it's an older book. I assume they keep updating it. Otherwise, it's kind of filled with classics at this point. But yeah, he's a great resource. Jim Treely's the author of that. Yeah, because it is hard. It's hard to tell what your kid's going to like. It's hard to tell, you get a book and it sounds really good and then you read it and you're like, never mind, so Amy's like person that you can go to or find that like can give you great suggestions and they work for your kid. Keep going to that person.
And since you've been so long in the industry and have so much exposure to all these books, have you noticed a change in subjects or how kids' books are written over the last, 15 years? And if so, what's with the classics? Like, do we still read them, or do you say, oh, like this used to? Because I see a lot of books that I have been read and I know from my childhood, and I wonder now. I skip through them. I'm like, looks fine to me, but then I'm not sure. Like, okay, am I like still keeping up with everything? Am I like not? I don't know. Are there words in it that we don't say anymore, or are they like concepts or whatever? So I'm just curious to see or to hear how your experience over this big time span has been with the new books.
Well, I would say like the biggest change has definitely been inclusion and diversity, which has been amazing that the publishing industry listened and started making that change. So there's so many more books coming out now that are written by people of color, that are featuring children of color, that are featuring storylines about gay, lesbian, LGBTQ plus. There's just so much more of that in books now that I just think is amazing and so needed and written well and beautiful illustrations. You had a lot of the classics from back in the day, like Heather Has Two Mommies or whatever, that are just so dated now, even though it was like a good subject, so it's like now you have like a wealth of actually really good books that are about these different topics. And as far as the classics go on that, some have lasted and are great and are fine, and some haven't. And we do have to, again, you'd read it beforehand and think, do I feel comfortable with this? Is this something I want to share with my kid? Is this a conversation I want to have with my kid? So for instance, like Brown Bear, What Do You See is my daughter's favorite. Like she knows when to turn the page again. Like she's only 11 months old and she knows, and it's animals. There's nothing wrong with that book, right? Like it's a classic for a reason and it should just keep being read to kids. Versus I got 10 Little Fingers, 10 Little Toes by Mem Fox, which is still sold all the time. And I didn't feel comfortable with it. There wasn't necessarily anything right away that like I could put my finger on, but it felt outdated in a way. And the biggest thing to me was like, well, limb difference. Like not every baby has 10 little fingers and 10 little toes. Some babies are born without an arm or a hand. Like some babies are born with extra finger, or toes. And it seems like something so simple. It's just a sweet book about like, it's supposed to be how all babies are the same and doesn't matter where you were born. So it feels like something people want to read to their kids. And it didn't make me feel comfortable when I got it. So I don't read that one when I go to events. We have it in our house because I bought it. So I do sometimes read it to my daughter just because it's there and she grabs it off the shelf. But I would say that's, we also have Harry the Dirty Dog. It's a fun book. It's about a dog who gets dirty. All of the pictures and illustrations are of white people, though. So again, that's not one that I like read in my group because I don't think that it needs to keep being reinforced. I can probably find a better dog book or, it's not at this point, but it's an okay book to read to my kid. There's nothing bad in it, right? I don't even know if I want to think of an example, but there are some classics that are bad, that have like bad stereotypes of Chinese people or, and you're like, okay, let's let that one pass into history, So again, whenever you can, try to read the book ahead of time. And this is one of our expat Netherlands issues, like one that I'm having as a person buying English books to read in a setting with other people, is it's hard to find English books here. You can go to Waterstones or American Book Center. So if I want to find something ahead of time to read and like see if I like it, a lot of times I have to order the book. So I don't know until I get it. I've gone to my local library and it's hard for me to find them. I still need to visit the Central Library, which I hear is amazing and has a great selection and is wonderful. But it is an extra challenge that we have here because it's not just going and picking up books at the library in the same way we would have done in our home countries. So we do have to do a bit more vetting and searching things out. And I hope that maybe I'm being a resource for that for some people because I'm doing it and bringing that to them at Baby Bookworms or on my Instagram page. But yeah, it's not always easy.
Yeah. I have been to the Central Library the first time a couple of days ago, and I was blown away how amazing this place is.
Yeah.
Everyone kept telling me, I went to my little local one around the corner. It was already nice, but I went there and I was like, wow, we spent 2 hours there without any drama, with just picking books, reading them, playing there. It's really such a great resource. And especially if you are new to the topic or just want to explore it, the library is really still a great place to go and a great place to discover. And especially at the Central one, they also have events for kids and also reading clubs there and all that. So that is really a great resource. And especially also if you don't want to buy all these books
Exactly. It adds up. I mean, that's a problem. I'm getting a big collection because of what I'm doing, but it's adding up. And so we will say that the libraries here are free for 18 and under. So like I said, just signing her up for that Book Start program was just signing her up for a library card. So if people here don't have it yet, like go get your kid the free library card. I'm privileged. I have a nanny 1 day a week and like she speaks Dutch. So that's an activity I send them to do. I'm like, take her to the library, pick out a whole bunch of Dutch picture books, read them to her in Dutch. Like, so it's still, even though I don't speak it, it's still a really great resource for our children who will be Dutch speaking by going to school here, and having that for themselves. And like, I love that there's cafes in all of them, you can just go sit and get a coffee, let them crawl around. So, we might be limited with our native language choices, but the libraries still are amazing places. And there are English read alouds. I think at least 1 or 2 branches that I've heard of do English read alouds there. I haven't been to them yet, but they list it for 2 to 4-year-olds, which is, I do mine for 0 to 2, but I'm not sure if they're flexible with that or not, but they have Dutch read alouds too.
I think especially our generation keeps forgetting about the library because we have social media and we have all this exposure, and there's like tons of subscriptions and boxes and this and that. And then it's like another thing to pay and another thing to pay when at the library it's for free.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can just go, and if you don't like it, you bring it back. If
Yeah.
you want 10 books, you get 10 books.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
is there any way, speaking of having a lot of books, like is
Mhm.
there a rotation that you do of books, and how do you present them to your child? Is it like a
Mhm.
shelf, kind of like a
Mhm.
Montessori way, or
Yeah.
are they away? Like, what's the best way to
Yeah.
have the rotation and how to present them?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So, the best way to say it is the cover facing out. So, when you think of those little tiny spines all stacked together, the kid can't make out what that is. They can't read the spine. They don't know. So, the more face out books you can have, the kid's going to gravitate to that cover. They're going to gravitate to the colors. They're going to pick something out. So, because I don't have a lot of space, we have our small Amsterdam houses. You kind of end up using the Montessori method of switching things out because there's only so many face out books you can have. So, I have those little IKEA spice racks. I don't know if you've seen these DIY, but we have them on our wall at a height where she can reach them. And we put a couple titles out facing out. And then I kind of try to rotate them based on season, based on theme. I have all the bedtime books in the bedroom, so it's kind of the same ones in there. As I get new ones, I take others down. And then the rest live on a bookshelf, with the spines because we need a place to put them. But yeah, they say there's been studies done on this that face out is the best way for kids to really make a selection, which you'll see too at the libraries here. They have some really great face out bins for books where you can kind of just rifle through the bins and all the books are facing outward. So that's a great thing that libraries do as well.
And how many of these books should I present? Like, should I put 5 out or 10 or 2, or like what's like a good number to
Yeah.
that they not only pick the same book all the time, but maybe try to pick another one, but don't get
Yeah.
overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, I would think it's kind of like one of those things, right, where they say if you have too many choices, you can't make a selection. So probably like 5 to 10 is a good number. More than that, it's too many. It's okay also if they want to read the same book over and over. So if they are going to the same book, like that's totally okay. For our younger kids, the ones who are, not like our babies, the 0 to 12 monthers, I just like choose different books and she just has to deal with it. I'm like, we're reading this one right now, and I've noticed she has favorites. There's ones that she wants to hear already again and she chooses them. But, as they get older, of course, they're going to have more of a say and be more demanding. So yeah, if you can kind of rotate what they see, then it's like, okay, well, I keep picking the same one out of these 5, but next week mom put 5 different ones out. So now I have to make a different selection, I heard somebody, I think it was on one of the feeds I follow the other day, had a really great suggestion too for like if a kid wants to keep reading books at bedtime to make a tomorrow stat. So like another, and you're like, yeah, tomorrow. And you let them know, yeah, we'll read that one tomorrow, and you kind of stack it up. And then the next day they can grab from that stack. So, when kid starts having more choice and agency, there's ways to limit the book so they finally go to bed, but also, have this different selection waiting for them. But yeah, I would say not too many, but not so little that they're like, oh, it's the same 2 books and we're just reading them over and over if they want to hear different ones, so.
Is there any last hot tip that you need to get to the listeners that you think is super important, or just one thing that a question that always pops up and it's like your golden rule or your golden nugget for them?
Yeah, I guess I would say my golden rule, and I said it kind of once already in here, is reading is reading is reading. Whatever you can read to them, even if it's just like a magazine or a cereal box when they're really little, right? Like whatever words they're hearing is great. If you can get to 1 story a day, if that's all the time you have. If you thought you were going to do bedtime books, but they're falling asleep, then do wake up books. Like make it a part of your routine in whatever way you can. Sure. You just get some reading in once a day, and whatever it is, like we've talked about all these great selections and things, but if you're like, I only have this one book and it's 10 fingers and 10 toes, then read 10 fingers and 10 toes, right? So, that's my biggest thing, is just get those books in front of kids, get them looking at them, get them seeing and understanding what a book is, get them seeing you reading. Like sometimes when my daughter is independent playing, I'll take a book from the shelf, like an adult book, and I'll be reading, and she comes over and she kind of explores it and looks at it and touches it. And I'm kind of showing her like, this is an activity mama enjoys. I like to sit and read a book. And I'm hoping she'll understand that when she's older too, like, oh, we just sit and we read a book, So just any exposure to books, have having them like in every room in the house, because you like she comes and she pulls books off of our bookshelf in the living room, and it used to just be coffee table books, and I'm like, okay, well, let me throw some kids books in there, you know. So like having them wherever they can grab them and are interested in them and want to touch them, I just think that's the biggest and the best thing you can do, is just have books around, whether they're library, whether you bought them, whether you borrowed them from a friend, just have them in their environment and be reading at least once a day. That's my biggest thing.
Yeah, and I guess it's so simple and but still so hard because we are drawn to, we'll put a, of course, tablet like screen
Yeah,
time on, or even you hear stories, but it's different if you hear an audiobook or if you
yeah,
hear like a bedtime story or if you sit down and read. And I think also a lot of times now my daughter is 3.5, so she really like wants to chat with me and talk about her day. And oftentimes the books are a good introduction or just a good space. We just have the book open and then she kind of just tells me what her day was like. And then we sometimes pick up like, oh, that sounds fun. What is he doing? What is she doing? What's going on here? And then it's like a nice way to connect through the book. And then
yeah,
it can flourish into so much more
yeah,
than from
yeah,
reading. And just having that, she knows this is where we sit together. This is where we spend time. And then she sometimes, when she wants my attention now, she just brings a book because then
yeah,
she knows I have to sit with her. I have
yeah,
to read, like I have to spend the time with her. I can't do anything
yeah,
else
yeah.
but that.
Right? Yeah, they learn that too, right? They're like, this is a great way to be with mom and dad.
Because if I put on a story on my phone, I can still cook, I can still do this, I can run
Yeah,
around, but she knows if we're reading a book, then 100% attention, and
yeah,
that's what she wants. And I guess that's then a good thing if it hits so many boxes on different levels then.
yeah, definitely. And audiobooks are still books, you know, like, so it's still, I think it's great when they're school aged and older, like to really like audiobook, especially kids, they might have reading issues. And so they're still
Hmm.
getting comprehension skills and they're still listening to a story and acquiring that background knowledge that comes from books. And I would say when they're younger than that, still seeing the visual text as much as they can is like, it's good to have a both and, you know, so that
Yeah.
again, really learning this concept of books and words and that these little things on a page equal meaning in some way, you know? Yeah, because it's all great. It's a yes and.
Exactly. Great. Well, thank you so much for all this great information. So we covered what age groups are put together, what's the appropriate book for that, why reading is so important, where to get your books. And of course, you heard that Elizabeth is doing the little bookworms readings times. You can check out her website and her Instagram. We will put everything in the show notes, of course, so you know where to catch her. And I'm sure you are also, I guess, open for private consultations if
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
needs special topics, especially when it comes to more specialized topics
Mhm,
or things that they want to find in a book,
mhm.
parents. So I guess that's also an option with
Yep.
you.
Yep, yep. They can contact me through the website or Instagram, and that's I do library curation, be that for adults or for kids. And I might even sell book bundles at some point, like based on themes and age groups, but I have no date for that at the moment. So
Yet.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so, so much for all your wisdom. That was super informational for me as well. And then we will chat with you another time when we maybe have a book to talk about together and explore
Yeah,
together. And till the next
yeah,
episode.
that'd be great. It was so fun to be on. Thank you.
Thanks.